What?
Turn the volume up so you can't.
I'm not even listening to you.
Okay, good.
I'm waiting watching.
Well, I hadn't started yet. That's
I
why
didn't even realize.
Turn it up.
Okay.
As loud as you can.
Okay. So.
No, it's not. You're going to turn it all
So.
down. Hi, my name's Corey Murphy, and my topic of choice was golden rice, more specifically, genetically engineered fortification. So, just a little outline about what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to give a brief history on golden rice, where it came from, some background knowledge on golden rice. Then I'm going to talk about the controversy surrounding golden rice and other GMO products. After that will be political, economic, and sociocultural issues that get brought up with genetically modified organisms. And then after, I'll talk about the ethical considerations going forward with this kind of biotechnology and how it may change the way the world looks at these genetically modified organisms and potentially use them to a more fucking A. Fucking. Hi, my name's Corey Murphy, and the topic I chose to talk about was golden rice, and specifically on genetically engineered fortification. So, just a brief outline of what we're going to talk about today. I'll give a little bit of a history about golden rice and about genetically engineered foods, and some background knowledge on how that happens. Then I'm going to talk about the controversy surrounding gold rice, some major proponents, and some people who are against the idea of using genetically modified foods. Then I'll talk about the political, economic, and sociocultural issues that arise with this new biotechnology. And finally, I'll talk about the ethical considerations going forward with genetically modified foods. All right. So, a brief history on golden rice. The idea of golden rice started in about 1990 with Ingo Potricus at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, and his work was focused on introducing genes into rice. With other workers, with other researchers, including Peter Byers and Yi X, they were also major contributors that led to the research on the biochemical pathway that was introduced into the rice and the scientific evaluation of the research, respectively. The golden rice was first harvested in 2004. This is after over a decade being in fucking A. Oh, titties. Hi, my name is Corey Murphy, and my topic of choice was golden rice, more specifically genetically engineered fortification. Brief outline of what I'm going to talk about today. A short history on golden rice, some background knowledge on golden rice, how it was genetically altered, and why it's important. Then I'm going to talk about the controversy surrounding golden rice and other GMO products, including large organizations that either support or are against the use of genetically modified foods. Then I'll go into the political, economic, and sociocultural issues that arise with genetically modified foods. And then just a few ethical considerations going forward with the usage of genetic engineering, uh, playing God, as some people say, and some concluding thoughts. So, a brief history on golden rice. It started in about 1990 with Ingo Potricus at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. And he was focused on introducing genes into rice strains for the idea of attacking food shortages in the future as well as deficiencies in nutrition. Along with Peter Byers and Yi X, they were also major contributors that led to the rise of golden rice. And they worked on they led research on the biochemical pathways and then evaluating and how to fine tune that research, respectively. The first harvest of golden rice actually occurred in 2004, which is after over a decade, and that was in a controlled environment in a greenhouse. But in the months and years following, new versions of golden rice were created, which were more efficient in vitamin A production, which I'll get into in a minute. So just golden rice. It's genetically altered rice that has had beta-carotene biosynthetic pathway inserted into its seed, endosperm, using recombinant technology. Contains 50 to 60% of the daily vitamin intake in one serving of rice for vitamin A. How this is done, they use genetic modification techniques to fortify regularly consumed foods with dietary necessities rather than using outside supplements. And outside supplements of vitamin A will be talked about a little bit later. It was done in the rice by introducing new genes using plasmids, which are circular strands of DNA that were inserted into the developing rice embryo, and there the plasmid infects, quotations around it, the DNA of the rice and incorporates these new genes into the rice's genome. The use of this genetic modification in an organism was used to create this new synthetic pathway so that it could be fortified with vitamin A, which in this case would produce beta-carotene. However, this is actually present in the plant prior to this, but it's not created in the seed. It's rather created in the leaves. So the pathway is there in a sense, but it's turned off in the seed, in which the researchers and scientists found a way to switch back on. So vitamin A, why is it important? Vitamin A's body uses include reproductive health, growth, immune system integrity, and epithelial and ocular tissues. Now, with the deficiency of that, which is VAD, vitamin A deficiency, the symptoms are early development changes causing night blindness, but the major thing that comes along with VAD is death leading to infection, because the immune system is compromised in a way, so it can't fight off the infection once you get it. Vitamin A deficiency typically is present in areas of poverty, intestinal worms, inadequate fat intake, and poor nutritional education. So basically in lower quality areas, so third world countries, this is much more prevalent in Africa and Southeastern Asia, and it affects the predominant affected people are preschool children under 5, and that's about 250 million children in over 118 countries. So it's a large proportion of people, and it's fucking A. I hate myself. Okay, let me fix these shits because see the fucking error. I just want to slap someone. Vitamin intake. Shit. I don't want that would be smaller. I'm going to talk about it. Golden rice history? No. Fish. I'll try it again. Alright, let's try again. Cool. Restart. Alright. Slideshow. Let me start. Let's do this. And hi, my name is Corey Murphy. My topic of choice was golden rice, which is talking about more specifically genetically engineered fortification / modification. So a brief outline of what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about a little bit about the history of golden rice, how it came to be, some background knowledge on how it is produced. Then I'm going to talk about why is it important, talk about vitamin A deficiency and its effect on certain groups of people. Then the controversy surrounding golden rice and other genetically modified organisms. The people who support, people who are against. Then I'll talk about the political, economic, and sociocultural issues. And then finally, I'll talk a little bit about the ethical considerations going forward with genetically modified foods. So, brief history on golden rice. It all started in 1990 with Ingo Potrykus at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. And his focus was to introduce new genes into rice for the idea of trying to combat starvation and quality of food. So that's basically focusing on the nutrition going forward of developing populations. Other researchers that were important to this were Peter Byers and Yi X. They were major contributors. Peter Byers focused on the biochemical pathway, introducing those genes, and in addition with Ingo. And Yi X was more focused on the scientific evaluation, the fine-tuning of the research. The first harvest of golden rice was in 2004 in a greenhouse, and in the following months, their new versions of golden rice were produced and were much more efficient than the original strain. So they constantly got better at producing vitamin A precursors. So golden rice, genetically altered rice, has had. Did you just laugh at me? Now I have to start over. I have to. I hate myself. Huh? Yeah.
How far are we?
5 minutes? Just keep the headphones on, okay?
I wasn't laughing at you.
I know, but I heard a laugh and I got scared.
I'm sorry.
I got scared. I was like, come on.
Sorry.
Oh, fuck, I hate this. Alright. Alright. Hi, my name's Corey Murphy. The topic of choice for me was golden rice. More specifically, talking about genetically engineered fortification / modification of foods. So, a brief outline of what I'm going to talk about. Oh, fuck. 1 sec, I'm coming. Well, I was doing that for sure. I did 2 rounds. I thought the door was. Pfizer. Giving him back his stem. Okay. There we go. Come on. Hi, my name is Corey Murphy. The topic I chose was golden rice, and that topic focuses on genetically engineered fortification and modification of foods. So, a brief outline of what I'm going to talk about. A short history of how golden rice came to be, some of the people that were important in its development. A little bit of background knowledge on the science of golden rice. Then I'll talk about why it's important. Talk about vitamin A deficiency. Then the next major topic that I'll talk about is the controversy that surrounds golden rice and other genetically modified foods, and the people who support and are against the usage of them. Following that will be the political, economic, and sociocultural issues that get brought up with the introduction of this biotechnology. And then finally, I'll talk about the ethical considerations going forward with genetically modified organisms. So, a brief history on golden rice. In 1990, Ingo Potrykus at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology started to work on introducing genes into rice strains. With him, other researchers that included Peter Byers and Yi X led research on introducing new biochemical pathways and making sure that it was as fine-tuned as they possibly could. The focus of this whole research was to combat lack of food nutrition as well as total food consumption. So I hate myself. Focus of this research. Volume of food being produced, as well as the nutritional, increasing the quality of nutrition that was around. Hi, my name is Corey Murphy. The topic I chose was golden rice. The focus of golden rice is being genetic. Oh my god, I fucking can't. Hi, my name is Corey Murphy. My topic of choice was golden rice. And this topic talks about genetically engineered fortification / modification of organisms. A brief outline of what I'm going to talk about. I'll give a brief history on golden rice, the people who were important in developing it, some background knowledge on the science of how golden rice came to be, as well as why it's important. Then I'll talk about the controversy surrounding golden rice and other genetically modified foods and organisms, the people who support and are against the usage of them. After that will be the political, economic, and sociocultural issues that have to get brought up with the usage of this new and arising biotechnology and how it can be incorporated into our daily lives. And then a little talk about the ethical considerations going forward. So, a brief history. 1990, Ingo Potrykus at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology started to focus on introducing genes into rice. Along with Peter Byers and Yi X, they led research on introducing new biochemical pathways into different organisms, as in focused on rice, and the scientific evaluation, so more the fine-tuning of that research. The whole idea was brought up on increasing the volume of food that could be produced, as well as the quality of the nutrition in that food. Focus on people starving around the world. So if we can try and combat that, that would be a positive. Golden rice was first harvested in 2004, and that's a decade after the research started. So they had plenty of time to fine-tune and make sure that everything was in order. And in the following months that the first golden rice was harvested, they refined their techniques even further to have the golden rice be much more efficient in production of vitamin A. But I'll talk about that in a minute. So golden rice is genetically altered rice that has had a beta-carotene biosynthetic pathway inserted into its endosperm or seed using recombinant technology. And the importance of this is that it contains 50 to 60% of the daily vitamin A intake in one serving of rice. Now this will get brought up in a minute. So just a little background on the genetically engineering side of things. They use genetic modification techniques to fortify the regularly consumed foods, such as rice, with dietary necessities that sometimes are lacking in certain cultures or parts of the world, rather than using outside supplements. Now, this is done by introducing new genes using plasmids of bacteria that are regularly associated with the plants. And they contain genes which the plasmid itself, which is a circular piece of DNA, is inserted into the rice embryo. And from here, it infects the DNA of the rice, in a sense, and incorporates these new genes that can produce these new enzymes that can eventually create the beta-carotene, which is the precursor to vitamin A. Now, why is vitamin A so important? Vitamin A deficiency, or VAD, is an illness that is suffered mainly in Africa and Southeastern Asia. And the people who are mainly affected by it are children and pregnant women. Now, I focus on the preschool children, but in total, 250 million preschool children every year, total, are affected in over 118 countries. Now, this is important because a third of all deaths to under 5, so age under 5 adolescents, is a result of vitamin A deficiency, reported by the World Health Organization. So if we can try and combat this in any way, and introducing it in a crop that's eaten on a daily basis, that would probably be the easiest way to tackle that issue. But vitamin A, what is it used for in our bodies? Reproductive health, growth, immune system integrity, epithelial, and ocular tissues. So the ocular tissues gets brought up in early development of the deficiency by night blindness. But the major concern is that following an infection, your immune system is compromised, so it can lead to premature death, which obviously, if the focus is on children, that's not where we want to be going. So where it's typically present, vitamin A deficiency, areas of poverty, places with intestinal worms, so you can kind of get the feel that not as developed areas are the ones suffering. And inadequate fat intake, and poor nutritional education. So poor nutrition. So the controversy with golden rice. Now we have a way to produce this vitamin A rich crop. However, why aren't we using it? So there's two major sides. Those against the use of genetically modified foods for any reason, due to a change or loss of natural biodiversity, or potential unforeseen consequences in the future to health, environment, so forth. The major proponent of this side is Greenpeace, and their motto is, Greenpeace will never stop fighting for a greener, healthier world for our oceans, forests, food, climate, and democracy, no matter what forces stand in our way. So you can kind of tell that it's an environmental organization trying to prevent future issues. Now, the other side, those for the use of GMOs, because of the short-term gain that it would have, or it would save millions of lives per year due to diet inadequacies. Major proponent and funder of golden rice research is Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which most people know who Bill Gates is. So, a little bit more about Greenpeace. Their mission statement. Greenpeace is a global, independent campaigning organization that uses peaceful protest and creative communication to expose global environmental problems and promote solutions that are essential to a green and peaceful future. They are a non-governmental organization, and they do not want to see genetically modified foods being used in basically any way. And I got these, their reasons for not supporting golden rice right off their website. So main reasons are vitamin A deficiency can be fixed by natural means of implementing homegrown gardens that incorporate vitamin A foods. So saying that, yes, it can be fixed with, better intervention plans by other governments instead of having to genetically alter foods and do an unnatural process. Their next point is cross-contamination of golden rice in nature could destroy biodiversity and be incorporated into other rice strains and leave a permanent mark on the natural genome, which happens every day with modern farming techniques, but we'll get to that. And their final reason is goes against some religious and cultural beliefs. Certain cultures have a certain type of rice that they try to eat, and this would be going against that ideology, and Greenpeace says that that's wrong. So, supporters of golden rice. So there are many foundations that support it because of the potential usage and benefits that many people could get from it, which include the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, International Rice Research Institute, and the Helen Keller International. The major thing that I found was 107 Nobel laureates, which are Nobel Peace Prize winners from the past, signed a letter to Greenpeace to stop fighting golden rice usage. And the reasons that they're supporters are because genetically engineering food has gone on for thousands of years. Yes, not with the biotechnology that we have today, but in simple selection, cross-species breeding, things like that, where, yes, it's not being done on such a high sophisticated level, but you're still altering the natural genome, and we've done it, and we'll see the consequences of that even now and in the future. But if we're already doing it in one way, then what's the point? What's the harm in doing it in another? Another reason is it's much more feasible than other methods. So distributing large-scale supplements of vitamin A or other deficiencies that other people suffer from, it's a lot easier to do this, and it's easier to integrate into their way of life because they already eat a large quantity of rice every year. So if it's a staple food of a culture, why not just incorporate the vitamin A into that? Another huge reason can save millions of lives right now. It being implemented and given to these people, you can save plenty of lives and not have to worry about them not having vitamin A in their diets in the coming years. And the real last thing is the regulations in the U.S. don't really object to genetically modified foods from being consumed. They actually say it can be just as safe or even safer than organic counterparts. So some political factors. The Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety. Now this was an addendum or an addition to an original bill written in the 1990s for the UN, and it's more of a precautionary approach to saving biodiversity. It focuses on the transboundary movement, so focusing on the movement of these genetically modified organisms in the natural environment. Now, many people abuse the vagueness of this protocol, and the people who don't want to see the scientific progress move forward with genetically modified foods will use this as kind of a backbone of why it shouldn't be done. But realistically, all it's saying is to not be dumb in what you're doing if you're going to genetically modify foods or genetically modify organisms and let them roam freely. The idea with the political factors is that there's plenty of scientific progress supporting the usage of genetically modified foods, with over 2 decades of research done by 500 plus research groups, as well as in 130 genetically modified organism projects. Now, the main concern a lot of people see is they don't really understand. They have a misinformation of what genetically modified foods can do to you if they're harmful in the long run. But But the thing that the media does, they use scare tactics and an idea of false equivalency. Now, false equivalency is taking a middle ground between two sides and saying there's truth to both sides, but not taking into account scientific evidence supporting one side or the other. So this helps spread that misinformation, people not really knowing the truth behind genetically modified foods, their safety, the benefits for the environment, things like that. But organizations will take this and use it to their benefit. And with Greenpeace, an old director said that even though they know their argument may be wrong, the longer they prolong the fight, the more money they can raise for their other causes, which is wrong in itself. But it's saying that they're probably wrong in saying that genetically modified foods aren't safe or healthy. So some economic factors. I think everyone has seen organic foods and how much they're much more expensive than the genetically modified foods counterparts. But the organic food industry uses that false information that people are given through the media, and they gain economically. So they can do higher prices for lower productivity, and they can spread their false claims about having better taste, being healthier, safer, and environmentally friendlier. However, that might not even be. That's not the case. In taste tests, they could see no difference in taste, health, just as safe. FDA says it, so I'll trust it. And environmentally friendly, you can produce more crops for the same amount of energy and time being put in for the organic foods. So it's not really as much an environmentally friendlier idea or usage. And Greenpeace funding increases by slandering good scientific research and products, which causes more support and possible donations. So Greenpeace is has an incentive to talk poorly about genetically modified foods because it'll give more steam and more funding for their cause, which they take advantage of. And another economic factor that came into my head was patent infringements with spreading of golden rice into the natural environment. Now, they're going to be planted in Africa and Southeastern Asia. Patent holders for golden rice could potentially say, well, we should take a cut of the money or take a cut of the rice that we can sell. That's just some economic factor that's been brought up in previous history. Some sociocultural factors. I think the main thing here with the cultural ideas is that there's a lot of misinformation that's been spread over the past 2-3 decades. And another main thing that some people don't understand is that the funding for where research comes from can have an effect and a bias on what that research ends up saying. So the first publicized research about genetically modified foods was done by Ewan and Putzty on potatoes, and then Losey and al. On monarch butterflies. Now, their research showed adverse health effects from these organisms by ingesting genetically modified foods. However, the actual research didn't say that it really was showing those adverse health effects. They were drawing their own conclusions without data that supported it, and the experiments couldn't be repeated, which is a central dogma of being able to say that research is on strong foundation. One of the other cultural factors that some say the golden rice is against some community cultures and is immoral to force into their societies, as well as the whole playing God idea of altering the genome of these species when we really shouldn't have a say in it. In my opinion, I think if we can, why not? So, some quick ethical considerations. Is the potential risk of harming biodiversity more important than saving millions of children's lives as well as pregnant women? Is that harming of biodiversity, the potential harming of biodiversity, more important than that? Many researchers have said that it wouldn't affect too negatively the biodiversity, but if you're taking a more precautionary approach, I guess anything could. Is genetic modification much different than simple selection, interspecies crossing, and other farming techniques? We've done genetic altering for the past 1,000 years, as I said before, and is this any different? Are we going to put this in a different category and say that this is taking it too far, or say this is just the next step in what we've done in trying to produce more crops for an increasing global population? Is the potential benefits to saving natural resources, increasing efficiency, worth the risk of the unforeseen consequences in the future? We can gain a lot from using genetically modified foods. We can learn a lot about genetics in general. And we can increase the amount of food load that gets produced every year. But is that weighed against some potential unforeseen consequences that we may not think of, or that we may not take into account right now, but in maybe 100 or 1,000 years, we see the effects of it. One of the major contributors is the Vitamin A Global Initiative, which includes UNICEF, the Canadian International Development Agency, as well as the United States Agency for International Development, and the Micronutrient Initiative. Now, these are all companies that are trying to focus on VAD, vitamin A deficiency, and trying to combat it in any way they can. And golden rice has been one of the topics that has been brought up on multiple occasions. So, just some concluding thoughts. With the current understanding of science behind genetically engineered foods, the use and safety of them is defended. There is plenty of research saying that genetically modified foods is safe. Government agencies support it. FDA supports it. Say that they're safe to eat, safe to consume, and why not? Is my thought process on it. Next concluding thought, the widespread usage of GMOs such as golden rice has been held back from misinformation, media stunts, that idea of false equivalency I was talking about, economic benefits of organic industry, and then many other reasons. I think without these, the golden rice and more genetically modified foods or genetically fortified foods would be on the market today and being spread across the world, and the potential benefits of those being taken advantage of. But from these groups and trying to cover up scientific knowledge and information, that they've more or less gotten their way in suppressing it. The groups that are talking, the groups that are against it, Greenpeace, they disapprove of GMO's usage due to uncertainty, has been evident, and have tried to hinder forward progress, even though they know eventually they'll lose and that the science behind genetically modified foods will come out on top. And just some the ethical considerations that need to be kept in mind. But in my opinion, however, with constant monitoring, I think golden rice and other organisms can be used in a safe and beneficial way for societies. Misfortune, for all these societies that have hurting populations because of vitamin A deficiency, I think this would be a great way to integrate this biotechnology and make the world a slightly better place. Thank you. Done. Oh my God. So. Do I have a fucking quote? At least 20 minutes. 20.